Good evening, everyone. My name is Logan Herring. I'm the CEO of the Warehouse REACH Riverside and Kingswood Community Center. Tonight, we have a treat for you. We have Black excellence on full display. 4 men that have been just blazing the trails here in Wilmington and Delaware. And before we get started and we get to the panel with my esteemed guests, we are going to open with a brief video that explains the work that we're doing here in Riverside and the impact that we had in 2020. So enjoy, and we'll be right back with you with our special guests.
The work group, the volunteers, the supporters, the donors, the community residents are working to deal in one of the most challenging times in our country.
If we're ever going to make a real difference in how we address racial inequalities in the United States, REACH Riverside, the work around Riverside, is some of the most important in our whole country.
The organization has credibility citywide. It's got credibility among foundations and corporations and governments. We just have a strong sense that this is going to be a successful endeavor.
Children and sort of teens and young adults of color are not getting a fair shot in our county, in our city, in our state, in our country. And this is an institution where we work to make society a little more equal.
These are our children, right? These are the children that we see in our hospital. These are the children in our community. These are our children, and we must do more.
If we can make a lasting difference in Riverside, we can show that we can actually make a lasting difference in intergenerational poverty that is highly correlated with race.
We're in a pandemic. We also have faced a racial reckoning. And so to see this community, to see REACH Riverside come together and say, we're not going to just lament and feel bad about the situation. We're going to go into action. From their health to their education to the development of this area and building wealth and home ownership, it is a past, present, and future that will create a legacy for all of us.
I'm Logan Herring, CEO of the Warehouse REACH Riverside and Kingswood Community Center, what we affectionately call ourselves the Work Group. The impact of our work in 2020 has been tremendous. We distributed over $280,000 collectively to all of the families in the public housing community of Riverside. We distribute 342 Chromebooks, over 10,000 meals, providing household supplies, assisting folks get signed up for the census. Our team, our staff, our board members, our volunteers, our partners, everybody really stepped up to the call.
We had to adjust our delivery throughout the year. Certainly wanted to still have an impact even in face of COVID. So we were finding different ways to be able to continue to have an impact of our community, even though the center wasn't physically open.
It's just so amazing because there's something about empowering and uplifting a community through food. I think we're going to start a movement of people taking back their power to grow and really cultivate their bodies in a different way.
My team has gone beyond what I expected. I try to get them to focus on where we are at this moment and the things that we could do to help the children become the great people we know they can.
We are going to create a cradle-to-college education system to serve the kids, plus all the health and wellness facilities that are necessary to make for a robust neighborhood. Taking people out of an impoverished situation and moving them into a thriving mixed-income environment, you say, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
We know concentrated poverty does not work. Historically, that is what public housing has done. What we're doing here is it's a microcosm of what we're trying to fix in the nation as a whole.
Teen Warehouse is a place of refuge for all of our children. When you have the President-elect of the United States come visit the Teen Warehouse, that matters. That tells our children that you are the most important individuals in the nation. And that's the message that we need to be sending to our babies.
My passion is to give back to them so they can have more than what I had, and they can see, wow, Miss Melody, you grew up in Southbridge, you have a master's degree, how did you do this? Because I want them to know that they can do it too.
So you name it, we did it. Virtual programming, access to healthcare, access to resources, access to basic needs. That's what we did, and that's what we're continuing to do. The mission at REACH Riverside is to eliminate the barriers of structural racism, identifying what the oppression and those barriers have been over time, and systematically break them down, and at the same time, build our community up. And that's what we're doing with the work group, the Warehouse REACH Riverside and Kingswood Community Center.
All right, we are back. And like I said, I got some special guests. I'm sure you know most of them, if not all of them. My name is Logan Herring. I'm the CEO of the work group, the Warehouse REACH Riverside and Kingswood Community Center. Special shout out to the TAP Network and It's Time for partnering with REACH Riverside, the Warehouse in Kingswood, on this event of what does Black excellence mean to you? So at this point, can I have my guests start to come in? Gentlemen, looking good. How you doing this evening?
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, brother. Blessed indeed.
Good. So for those of you watching us, this will be an interactive conversation about Black excellence. Of course, we have some phenomenal perspectives here from our amazing leaders here in Wilmington, Delaware. But you can also join this conversation through the chat function. I have it on my screen, and the gentlemen have it on their screens as well. I got some people working behind the scenes to make sure we address and try to interact with you as much as possible. So let's get right to it. I'm going to do some brief introductions, but then I'll give you all the opportunity also to speak more about the work that you're doing and why you are considered some of the top Black male leaders and influencers here in Wilmington and the state of Delaware. So Mr. Ray Rhodes, my esteemed Kingswood Board Chair, it is an honor to have you here with us today. Also the Executive Director of Christina Cultural Arts Center. I also have Jahmere Hargraves, who I've known for a few years now, one of the co-founders of the Warehouse, and is doing amazing things. And I don't even want to touch the surface of that right now because we could be talking all night. I got Markevis Gideon, co-founder, owner of NERDiT now, making sure that communities, low-income communities of color like Riverside have access to technology. And then Aaron Bass, who Aaron and Markevis are my workout buddies, so I often find ways to pick on them. And Aaron, I call Joe Clark because he is the CEO of Eastside Charter School. And if we have time later on this evening, we'll break out into the fairy side. But anyway, I digress. Aaron, CEO of Eastside Charter School. So gentlemen, I'm gonna kick it to you, Ray Rhodes first. Just take about a minute, talk about yourself, background, and the work that you're doing now, as briefly as you can, and obviously we'll have a lot more time to touch on the things that you're doing.
Okay, thanks, Logan. Again, James Ray Rhodes, native Wilmingtonian. I grew up in Wilmington. I like to say that I lived in every hamlet, borough of the city. I grew up in Riverside. I lived there for a few years. Then we moved to South Bridge, left there, went over to North Side, left there, went up Hilltop, up top, then left there, went down the bottom. And then, of course, in high school, I lived on East Side, graduated from Howard High School. Currently serve as the Executive Director of Christina Cultural Arts Center, where our mission is simply to change the trajectory of children's lives through infusion of the arts. I'm also the Board Chair at Kingswood Community Center. And of course, that 75-year-old organization is planted well in the Northeast community. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all you do for our communities, and I appreciate you. Markevis Gideon, I'm gonna come to you next, sir. Also a product of Riverside. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Again, Markevis Gideon. I am the founder, owner of NERDiT Now. And when people see NERDiT Now today, they see Shark Tank, Shark Tank, Shark Tank. Yeah. But what I like to remind them is that kid that grew up in Riverside, who had a laptop donated to him at 12 years old, which would change the trajectory of his life, going to Howard High School, like Brother Rhodes said, graduating there to become a Microsoft certified systems engineer, going to college, graduating with 2 degrees, going to China for 5 years, just to come back to see this big digital divide with my community. I would have never known a kid from Riverside would ever be where I'm at today. To say that in 2020, we donated over 5,000 laptops back into underserved communities. And that's just the start so that we can help close that digital income and wealth divide, which I'd love to talk a little bit more about later on today. Blessed.
Thanks, Markevis. And you got to understand that we are not just colleagues, peers, co-workers. Like, I have strong relationships with all of these men. So me and Markevis were hanging out a few months ago, and we went to an Asian restaurant. And they were speaking a language I didn't understand it, and I was like, Marquis, he was like, nah, this is a Japanese restaurant. And then he started listening. He was like, nah, they speaking it. So I want you to say, what does Black excellence mean to you?
Little man there for
we
you.
Got some talented brothers here tonight. That's all I'm gonna say. So Aaron Bass, top that. Joe Clark.
Clark.
Your turn, sir.
Aaron Bass, I'm CEO for Eastside Charter School. Before that, I was serving as Chief of Staff in Philadelphia for KIPP schools. And also I served as instructional consultant or coach for the Eagles, the mighty Philadelphia Eagles football team. I think I was one of the first instructional coaches in the NFL. I did that for a couple years. Glad to be here tonight.
Thanks, Aaron. And I give Aaron a hard way to go if it seems like I'm a little bit more rough on Aaron because I'm a Cowboys fan. And obviously Aaron is not.
It's because
he's one of those typical Eagles fans that will not leave you alone when they're winning or they're losing. But he's a good sport. And Ray Rhodes, I know I got a fellow Cowboys fan here,
That's
so
right.
I feel good about our numbers right now.
Are we live streaming right now on the
We
internet?
are live streaming, and this is being recorded and it will be shared later. So
I just had a question. Was the internet around when the Cowboys won anything? I don't think y'all even had the internet.
Depends on what kind of live you're talking about.
I VHS. I don't know if you can live from a VHS tape, but I'm glad to be here tonight, fellas. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's move on because we're not being good examples for the young man that we're introducing right now. Jahmere Hargraves, tell us a little bit more about yourself, sir. I see a Howard. Is that Howard High? What does that Howard represent, sir?
Nah, this is Howard University, man. Howard University. But hello, everybody. My name is Jahmere Hargraves. I am 18 years old, and I'm a senior over at Mount Pleasant High School. I am a founding teen of the Warehouse, and I also serve as the vice chair of the Teen Executive Committee. I am also the founder of my own clothing line. It's called Loyalty Never Fails. I have a 4.2 grade point average. I am at the top 10% of my class at Mount Pleasant High School. I'm a first generation college student, and I grew up in Wilmington, and I'm glad to be here today. So thank you for this opportunity.
Sounds like Black excellence, if you ask me. I tell you. So Ray Rhodes, we're going to come to you first, sir, to talk a little bit more about Black excellence. I know there's a common theme between you and Markevis, and the first thing I want to touch on, given what Jahmere is talking about with the 4.2 GPA, is Black excellence in education. I know you're a former educator. You and Markevis both went to Howard High School, and I hear stories because I have family that also went. What Howard looked like then in terms of educators, and I really want you to touch on what does Black excellence look like in education, and obviously, Aaron, this fits in with you as well. I know you also went to HU. It was a different HU. But Ray Rhodes, what does Black excellence mean to you in terms of education?
Yeah, I think the climate today that our students are dealing with is a little bit different than when I went to school. We had, I would say, predominantly African-American teachers, probably 80 to 90%. We did have some white teachers, so we had some influence. So those were the instructors who basically would tell me about historically Black colleges and universities. I had a come to Jesus moment when I was in 10th grade. I made the basketball team, but then when I got my report card, I brought 2 C's home. I also had 3 A's and a B on that report card. And for most kids, that was like, yes, that was glory. But for my mom, that wasn't good enough. So she told me 2 C's, getting 2 C's was average. And that's when education really started to impact me. So she made me quit the team. Couldn't go out for 12 weeks. I had to stay in my room. Couldn't go play sandlot football. Couldn't go to the boys club. So for 12 weeks, all I was doing was studying. I was reading, started to learn a little bit more about my culture, about my heritage, about pioneers. And for the next 6 marking periods, I got straight A's. Went on to graduate first in my class. I was totally committed to being an architect. That started at 9 years old, but now the light had really went off that when I committed myself that I could do it. So I ended up going to Ohio State University because, to your point earlier, Aaron, they gave me the most money.
Right.
But Hampton had always been my dream. But so I got out there, and to be quite frank, it wasn't the culture that I expected. I was too cold, it was too big, and I just felt lost out there. So I told my mom I didn't want to do it. Prior to that, my senior year, I got an appointment by then Senator Joseph Biden to the Naval Academy, but I didn't want to go in the military. So I ended up going in the military, got on the GI Bill, and then I waited a couple years, got some work experience, and then I ultimately went to Hampton, and the rest is history. So the instructors were always there. They were always on your back. So when I told my instructors that, I got 2 C's and my mom wasn't too great about it, she said, well, what are you going to do about it? You got to commit yourself. You got to find new ways of doing it. So there was a young man, I believe by junior year, who was first in our class. He was a white student. And I found out from my counselor, she's like, you need to get all A's and no less than 1 B if you want to graduate first. And that's exactly what I did. I ended up graduating first in my class, but I was committed to it. I couldn't compete on a basketball court. I couldn't compete on a football field, even though she let me play football after I got those straight A's after that first marking period. But I could compete amongst myself and amongst my grades and whatever that workload was. So those teachers were there to push you. So when I went into the classroom, I remembered that. So I would push my students. I knew I couldn't stand in front of a classroom and teach 30 students 9th grade math when only 2 of them could do it. So I had to find out what each student was. So I had some students who could only do 1st grade math. So guess what? I gave them 1st grade math sheets so that when they were in class, they were on, they were paying attention. They were on task. And then when they got a 90 or 100 on their test, they was excited. So I engaged them, and we kept doing that all the way up to the end of the first marking period. And by the end of first marking period, my first year in the classroom, we went from 26% of the students who successfully passed the state standardized exam to 57%. So we made a dramatic impact, and I still keep in touch with some of my students today. So I enjoyed that. So education was very important early on, and most of our teachers lived in the neighborhood where we lived at. So if we were doing something in the neighborhood outside of school that we wasn't supposed to, the teachers would correct us. They knew our parents, they knew our relatives. So I really enjoyed having that village around me, and that was really encouraged me, inspired me to do the best I could and excel academically.
Beautiful, definitely Black excellence. And I'm hearing the importance of having instructors, educators that look like you, that are from the same neighborhoods, that understand the circumstances and the lived experiences that you have gone through. And that's why I want to go to you, Aaron, next. As being a Black male educator, something that is few and far between. I think I was watching something the other day, and it talked about statistically how important it is to have Black male educators and how those Black kids, Black students, particularly young Black males, do so much better when they have that presence in the room. And you being the principal, the CEO of Eastside Charter, can you speak about, perhaps your experience either as an educator or as a youth, a student growing up, and the influence that you are either having or it has had on you as well?
I work with a group called The Fellowship, and it's Black male educators, and we grew from 8 brothers sitting around a table just talking about like building each other up to then hundreds of brothers convening every other month just to build each other up and also to be role models for each other. There's a study done in North Carolina of a professor at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. Man's name is Papa George, and he studied the impact of Black male teachers on students of color. What they found was that by having a Black male teacher, there's about a 30 to 40% increase in your college going rate, and then also about a 20 to 30% decrease in dropping out. And when they broke out across the board and they said, so is it about the their evaluations? Is it about a certain class they're teaching? And they went through everything. They found out from the study, didn't matter. Just having a Black male between the ages of 3rd and 5th grade had a huge impact on your success later in life. So what does that mean? It means the representation matters. It means that as somebody who has spent his life advocating for Black men in the profession, it's because it's actually going to pay off. It means that we also need to figure out how do we encourage young men to get in the profession and actually be Black excellence. One of my heroes is W.B. Du Bois, and W.B. Du Bois is somebody who was a great educator even since he was a child out in New England, and then actually went off and taught at Clark Atlanta, and was able to help found and create Ghana as a nation.
You see Ray? Look at Ray.
I got you. Yep, that's Booker T, and that's WB. Yep, great brothers. The key thing is for us to figure out how to just build each other up, and that's what Black excellence means to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we're starting to get some interaction in the chat room. Brian DeSabatino, I hope you're still with us, even though we got some Cowboys fans on the panel. And then Carl Lakin, excellence is tied to expectation, support, and people having belief in you. Good words, Mr. Rhodes. Good words. Definitely. Definitely. Markevis, I know that there's one particular educator that really changed your life, and they put something in your hands. And you touched on it earlier, but I want you to give me a little bit more about that, because, I mean, literally that one act in your life now puts you on a world stage. And we're not overshooting now. I'm not exaggerating. You were on a world stage. I remember, like, I'm getting chills saying it because I was in front of my TV like, go ahead, boy, Riverside, stand up. So, Markevis, talk about that one experience and the impact it had on your life.
As a Black young man growing up in the city of Wilmington, Riverside, and various places, North Side, East Side, to two parents who didn't graduate from high school, the last thing on my mind was going to college. We couldn't afford it. We didn't need it, apparently, because my parents were surviving. Who wants it? My dad was showing me, let's sell these jeans here. Let's sell some jerseys over there. We can make our own money legally without going to college. But at the same time, he kept saying, but you need to go to college. And I was distracted by like money versus college. And finally, we got enough money to move out the hood. My parents at 12 years old took me out to Claymont. And I was like, oh, happy day. Out the hood. And then my life began to change when one teacher, Mr. Jeffrey Epstein, Black man, of a tech workshop. I forget what the name of the class was. He came to me and showed me an old computer, probably like this big. It was a laptop. And he said, here, your family don't have a computer. Take it home. I took that thing home and did everything but what he thought I was going to do with it. I took it apart. I didn't do no homework. I didn't do no games. I did nothing but took it apart, put it back together, took it apart, took it to him so he could see it. Then I put it back together. He saw something in me, took me to a room full of computers and said, see what you could do. Man, I'm over at Tally Middle School putting these computers together, putting them together. We giving them to teachers. I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought it was fun. Just to say, go back into Wilmington, Howard High School of Technology. I'm like, no, not back to hood. I want to go back. That was the best thing that could ever happen to my life. That was Black excellence. Him seeing Black excellence in me from a man with nothing but Black excellence, sending me on a trajectory that I could have never foresaw without that one laptop being donated to me. Microsoft certified systems engineer by 17 because of that one computer being donated to me. Them telling me actually go to college, get 2 degrees because that one computer being donated to me. This all happened all from Black excellence coming from a Black high school where I'm so forever grateful to be where I'm at today. This blessed.
I see one question in the chat room from Brian. And Brian, I'm going to get to you in a second. I want to address Jahmere next. Because when we talk about excellence, a young brother with a 4.2 GPA, helped co-found a nonprofit, sits on our teen executive committee for the warehouse. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about. But Jahmere, I want you to, from your own mouth, talk about your experience and what Black excellence means to you.
Yep. So I grew up in the city of Wilmington. I pretty much didn't have much growing up. My mom, I live in a low income community, very impoverished. And the things that I seen growing up, they were always like super negative. Most of my friends, they took the route of, getting into gangs and getting into drugs and things like that. But I never took that route. I wanted to seek a new way of life for myself. And my narrative and my view really shifted on the city of Wilmington as a whole when I began working with the warehouse. Because at first, I honestly felt like growing up in the city of Wilmington, there was no room for opportunity and there was hope. There was no hope at all for Black young boys growing up like me. But I honestly felt that way because I was never exposed to, different opportunities, or I was never exposed to, different perspective of life. So when I began working with the warehouse and I began to, get around Logan and, get around like Black people who are thriving and are making a change, it completely shifted my whole, not only view on Wilmington, but life as a whole. I realized that at the end of the day, I am in charge of my narrative, whether I come from a high-income community or a low-income community. And even though all odds were against me, I know that I had to do my best to make sure that I become the best version of myself, and I'm doing that today. My life wasn't necessarily like a silver spoon. I didn't have everything really given to me, which most people don't. So I feel like it's my job to, do my best to take advantage of all the opportunities that are in front of me, and I do that every day.
So, Jahmere, I'm going to stay with you for a second before I get to Brian's question. And Christine, I see your question as well, so we'll make sure to address that. But Jahmere, I just want to stay on you for a second. So one question for you, and then I'm going to have a follow-up question, is how many colleges, universities have you applied? It's going to be a series of questions, but I know you can answer them quickly. I know you're pretty bright, so you'll remember. How many college universities did you apply to? How many were you accepted to? How much scholarship money? And what was the thing that happened to you that you're really excited? Well, at least I know I'm excited about that happened a couple weeks ago.
Okay. So I've applied to 24 colleges in total. Currently, I'm 16 for 16. So I have not been denied at all. I have not been deferred. I have been accepted into every college I applied to. And recently, I was encouraged by Miss Melody and Logan to, seek a different type of route and just take advantage of all opportunities and, seek elsewhere outside of, just local colleges and colleges that, are on the front line and things like that. So they pushed me to look into some Ivy Leagues, and I looked into Harvard. I applied to Harvard and they gave me an interview. And my interview with Harvard, it was super amazing. It felt super good. And I'm really, really proud of myself because not a lot of people can say that they did that, let alone somebody like me who doesn't really have the best resources and the best economic and financial situation. And for me to be having an interview with Harvard, that's big. So I'm super proud about that. And I want to say thank you shout out to Miss Melody and shout out to Logan for, pushing me to expand my palette. So I just want to thank you guys for that. And in terms of scholarship money, it's pushing $1 million in scholarships, if I'm being honest. So not flexing or anything, but it's around $800,000 in total.
That's a healthy flex, brother. Go ahead and flex that money, because when I need a loan or when I see you in the hallway and I'm like, let me borrow $10, remember that you said this, and it's recorded. So I just want to have that on the record.
Yes, thank you.
So Ray, we have a question for you from Brian DeSabatino, who I'm sure I think you know fairly well. And he says, I've walked the halls of our schools and sat in classrooms. I've met bright and excited young Black men who aspire to be in the building business, but they never make it to our job sites. Why?
Again, I think that's a combination of things. I think for me, I mentioned earlier, there was always someone there, whether it was a Maurice Pritchard or Doc Burley, Alexis Nichols, or somebody always there to push me or pull me when I seem to get off track. And to Jahmere's point earlier, the same things that our students are faced with in our community today, I was faced with. There were gangs, there were guns, there were drugs, but I had folks to say, no, you're not going that direction. And it was almost like a command. You're not going that direction. You're going this way. So when someone saw me going the other way, they would tell one of the others, hey, Ray was down this way. Nah, don't go down there. You're not supposed to be over there. So a lot of these kids today, they have aspirations. They have dreams, Brian, but they don't have what I don't think they have mentors and role models in their lives because of the structured broken homes, because of structural racism, things are going on in our communities, and they get discouraged easy. So we need to get a network up of mentors, I think the training opportunities that we can provide for them in the industries and in the building trades, I think that would be great. I know there were some organizations that were doing some mentoring over at Dale Castle and Howard for those that were in the building trades. So we need to continue to have role models in their lives to push them, because a lot of them come from broken homes. They come from families that, to Jahmere's point, don't have the resources. I always like to say I didn't grow up with a silver spoon either. It was more like a rusty fork, but I made it out. But again, I had role models in my life. I had men. I didn't grow up with a father. It's a single mother raising 2 children. But I had role models. I had teachers who made sure they would call my mother. They would call my grandmother, say, you know, is Ray wasn't at the boys club today. Do you know where he is? Oh, yeah, he had to run an errand or whatever. So they would follow up. And that's what we need in these children's lives today. So, you know, I know you've done a great job, Brian, of mentoring. If we can get others in architecture field, construction field, to go and reach one child, reach one student, to let them know that there is opportunity for them in the building fields, it'll go a lot further.
Thanks, Ray. And one common theme I think that everyone's going to hear is that we all had a village. We had a support system around us. We had mothers, fathers, uncles, neighbors, teachers, and we need to get back to that. We need to get back to a whole community where we're responsible for each other and responsible for each other's kids and families. And that's definitely, you know, the vision for Riverside with our revitalization effort and everything that we're doing. There's another question, and Aaron, I want to point this to you because it's about education. How can we better support teachers of color in Delaware in particular? Should we tap into national networks like BMEC, or what does or should exist here? What advice would you give to teacher educators in this area?
I think it actually follows up with what Brother Ray was saying about just providing opportunities. And so one, for when Black men get into the teaching profession, they are not your disciplined people. Just to repeat this, when Black men get in the teaching profession, they are not your go-to for discipline. And many times brothers get an education and they instantly become a dean, or they become somebody to just work with. There are many brothers out there who want to get involved in STEM. There are brothers who want to teach English. There are brothers that want to do a lot, so do that. 2, BMAC is the fellowship, and so that's the point we had started. So I think tap into national groups. Yes, I know Delaware is actually trying to do that. I also know that who is in front of the table, the recruiting table, matters a lot. And so I'm working with a company right now in Ohio that is actually looking to diversify it's a construction company. And we started talking about who's doing the recruitment. If the person doing the recruitment doesn't look like the community that you're trying to get into, you won't find anybody.
Right.
That's the key thing I think is about, one, making sure you have opportunities like Ray has said when you're younger, having young people get into teaching. I started teaching when I was 16 years old. I started writing curriculum when I was 18. I was an administrator when I was 20. What I'm saying is give young people opportunities because they can do these things. And we try to do the same thing every day right now.
Beautiful. And speaking about young people, Jahmere, and giving opportunities, we came in front of you almost 3 years ago and gave you an opportunity, and I think you took full advantage of it. Can you talk about that experience when perhaps it was when you and I met and a group of your peers, and did you think I was crazy when I was talking about the warehouse? I'm sure you did, but talk about that experience and then, you know, how that has played a part. You mentioned it earlier, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Right. So the story behind me actually getting a job at the warehouse is crazy. So I actually had this mentor at another community center, and I think I was transitioning from my freshman year to sophomore year, and I was just eager to like find a job. I was trying to get money. I was trying to get money in my pocket because, you know, I'm a teenager. I wanted my own bag. So when he sent me the application, I didn't like thoroughly review what the position was. I just seen the pay. I seen the hours. I was like, man, sign me up for an interview. So when I went to the interview, and the interview went phenomenal, and I realized once Logan came and talked to us, I realized that I was getting myself into something deeper than I thought. I thought that, you know, this was going to be a job that I just, you know, show up to and just get through. But after my first couple of weeks of working with the warehouse, I seen like this is what I wanted to do, not only right now, but in my future also. And I say this because personally, I feel like I am the warehouse's demographic. I feel like personally growing up, I could have benefited from this project. So now for me to be a part of it, something that's gonna, encourage my peers to do better, like it's amazing. Because I have so many friends and I have so many people who, like I mentioned earlier, took that other route because they simply didn't have the resources. So, me being a part of this project, I feel like I genuinely like understand it because simply I could have benefited from this project. And I feel like, it was built for kids like me that grew up in the city, that do not have access to resources, that come from low income environments. So, and I take advantage of it for the next generations. I want to make sure that the next generations to come, they're not, stuck in a place, or they're stuck in a mindset that they can't get out because they don't have access to resources. So just for me to know that I'm doing something for the upcoming youth, it's amazing. And I just want to thank you again, Logan, for letting me be part of this project, because it's done nothing but good for me. So yeah.
No, and I thank you, brother, for being the example, the epitome of Black excellence. I mean, it was a hope and a dream, and you and other teams, your friends, your peers, made this come true. I don't think people understand the extent of when we say 4 teams by teams. Like, what does 4 teams by teams mean, Jahmere? Like, what did it mean in putting the warehouse together? Just speak to that, and then I'm gonna go to the next question.
Yes, 4 teams by teams is literally 4 teams by teams. It's exactly what it says. And when I say that, I mean everybody thinks they know what's best for teenagers. In terms of like the gun violence going on in the city and mental health and teens like decreasing, nobody really, asks teens like why these things are happening. People kind of develop these narratives in their head and they think that they know what's best for us. So for us teens, to have a seat at the table and for us to express, like what we want and what we need, it helps the adults like understand and provide us with the resources to make our lives easier and to make, our lives better. So yes, 4 teams by teams, it's exactly what it says. I was able to, like architects came to us and they came to me and my peers and asked us, what we want in this space. We are able to, hire program partners. We're able to, help people like develop their program through like our perspective, because we're the one that's going to be using the program. So 4 teams by teams is everything. It's literally what the city's been missing, if you ask me. So
I like that. That might be the new tagline, what the city's been missing.
Yep.
So we have a question, and I'm gonna open this question up for anybody that thinks they are equipped to answer it best. Many students seem to struggle with the artificial divide between making money and getting educated, not realizing it's not an either or, but a both and. How do we help students deal with this?
I can chime in where I was influenced very early. Again, not having much, we were focused on the other things that we could get or we did have. So, for instance, living in Riverside housing projects, my mother would always say, "Look, this ain't a mansion or a castle, but guess what? You're going to take care of it as if it was." So when you change the narrative, what Jahmere said, our mindset wasn't okay, this is just housing projects, we don't have to take care of it. Every Saturday we had to get up, we had to scrub floors, we had to get on our knees and scrub floors. I had to do dishes, I had to carry out the trash, I had to make sure everything was done. So the narrative was changed early by my mother to make me be able to say, okay, education's a focus now when you bring these 2 C's home. So to the question, I think a lot of our students don't have that, I would say, stable home environment or a set of mentors to tell them that you shouldn't be motivated by money. The money will come again, but if you focused on something else like education, getting a job skill, getting in the building industries, technology, or setting the goal of getting a 4.2. This is just amazing what this young man has accomplished. And this is the kind of things they need to see that can happen. So I think when we have people around us influencing us, that money shouldn't be a motivator. It should be the least of our motivations, and that we should focus on higher things. We can do that. One of the things I like to talk to our students about at Christina is, we always hear this narrative of they're at risk. I think the pandemic has proven that we're all in some way at risk. So if we're all at risk, why do we need to use that term on certain students? I like to think that they are at promise. So we're filling these kids' heads with, you got promise, you're at promise, you're at promise. So I like to be able to take those two words out of anything that we put in any of our grant applications. They're not at risk, they're at promise. And again, once you start influencing them with different language, different reflection of different examples, then it takes a different meaning.
I want to jump into that too. I think just to continue on with the idea of examples, I'm a kid that grew up in West Philly, across the street from a crack house. And somebody who put a post out a few weeks back, I said, you buy Nikes, I own Nike. And for that, it's because we need living examples about what wealth is and how that comes from your education. And too often on the block that I grew up on, the brothers that grew up on the block that were making $100, $200 a week, they looked nice. They had the nice sneakers, but they didn't own the block. They didn't own real estate, but they were ready to die for someone else's real estate. But when you actually have brothers that are out there doing this thing, who've built it through education, through Black excellence, then the whole narrative changes. If you're going to go out for something, go out because you own it. Make somebody move off your property, have people work for you, and build up your neighborhood. And so I appreciate what Logan's doing with REACH and with work. I appreciate the work that all you brothers are doing, because what that does is it shows young people what you are seeing out there. That's not money. Again, I don't want my students to be people that simply buy stuff, but that you actually own something and that you also put somebody up there because you got to make room for other people.
And I can tell you, speaking from experience, and when we're in the gym, half the time Aaron and Markevis are talking about stocks and Bitcoin and how did the market respond to this and to that. And I'm trying to get up on game. I'm not there yet, but I can learn from, I'm trying to learn every day, and I'm a sponge soaking it in. And Markevis, I'm gonna come to you to that point, because I see you as somebody that drives me every day in terms of inspiration, motivation, your work ethic. I think you and I probably compete for how many ideas we can come up with in one day, and then how we actually can pull half of this nonsense off and make it a reality. What is it that drives you? Because I mean, your energy is just infectious. Like, I know you ended up on Shark Tank, and I know that wasn't an easy process. So what is it that motivates you? And then how do you approach each day and then maintain and sustain that energy?
All right, I'm gonna try to make a long-winded answer short. My dad growing up would tell me, don't look at what I have, look at what I don't have. And when you really think about that, at first I'm like, well, you're a manager, you got a house, you just bought your house in Claymont. Like, okay, that's cool. But look at what I don't have. I still have to go to work and beat up my hands every day. I still hate my job. I'm not happy where I'm at today. Focus on what I don't have, not what I do have. And when I start embodying that in my mindset, I start really looking around and focusing on passion, what I actually love doing. And that right there tricked me back into going into education. To be completely honest, I didn't want to go to college, but I was passionate about technology. That right there led me to going into technology. And if you really think about like what most people are doing today, they're throwing darts in the dark. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. I want to be successful. You know what success looks like to you. You know what that bullseye is, but you're not really thinking about which way that bullseye is. So you got to take off the blindfolds and find that bullseye in your life. And once you find it, start honing in and getting closer to hitting that bullseye. Stop throwing darts in the dark. For once you realize that it's actually within your reach, things become attainable. Now, I'm a Christian. I often say, if you throw it out into the atmosphere, it'll come back to you. God said it's yours. You just got to claim it. But he never said that claiming it will be easy. So if you focus on possibility versus probability, I swear to God, it's yours. The probability of making it to Shark Tank. Every year, over 40,000 businesses apply. People don't realize that only 50 of them make it in a season. But only half of that actually are aired on a season. The probability sounds low. You focus on the possibility of it happening, and it's yours. God said it's yours. It's yours. Man, you focus on that possibility. Education is going to come because you're going to start studying more because you know it's possible. It's yours.
That's good word, brother. That's good word. I know you got Brother Ray Rhodes and Aaron who have, part of the clergy in their own right. And you are definitely dropping that good word there. And hold on, is Markevis, is your nickname Kiwi?
Yo, then I said throw respect behind my name, sir.
So that wasn't me. Somebody put that in the comment section. Said awesome Kiwi. So Aaron, we got another thing to tease him about when we lift tomorrow.
I look forward to that.
So Ray Rhodes, I'm gonna come back to you because there's a gentleman behind me who we are all familiar with, and I know there is a connection between this man and his untimely and unfortunate passing, and how it relates to an experience that you witnessed and you are part of. Yep. And how that relates to where you've come all the way back home to Kingswood Community Center. So could you walk us through that experience? Because every time I hear it, my heart just starts racing.
Yeah, so when Dr. King got killed, April 4th, 1968, my sister and I were in the basement of Kingswood Community Center, where, again, as you know, destiny would have it, I now serve as the chair of the board for that phenomenal organization. And, we had a bunch of administrators with just kind of shielding us from what was going on. And we were looking in amazement. We didn't know anything. I was 4, my sister was 6. And my mother rushed down, my grandmother rushed down. And of course, within months, our city was occupied. They occupied our city. National Guards occupied our city for 9 months. And that's the longest occupation that has ever had in our United States of America. But my mother took us home, and that night she gave us, and I would say I had a phenomenal sociology teacher, a professor at Hampton, and I would say she gave us the a lesson of a lifetime. She talked about why it happened. She talked about all the parameters around what we were going through as a country. She talked about the civil rights movement. But more than anything, she didn't make it about black and white. She didn't make it about right and wrong, because clearly he was assassinated. She made it about humanity. And she talked about that's what Dr. King was about. He was about humanity. He was in Memphis at the time when he got assassinated, going down there to speak out against the sanitation workers who were being treated unfairly. Some of those sanitation workers were white, some were black, some were Hispanic. So when she says, when you focus on black and white, you cross a barrier that some folk don't want to go into. You focus on right and wrong, it becomes to somebody's imagination or somebody's interpretation on whether it was right or wrong. But there's no challenge in humanity. And I relate that event to George Floyd. Somebody said, oh, it was the police officer had he was acting the way he was trained. He didn't do it because he was black, and he did do it because he was black. But the humanity issue comes into play. Clearly, that was not a humanistic event. So growing up in Riverside during that time, I had my first interaction with one of the National Guardsmen. I was outside playing as a kid. I collected G.I. Joes. I was outside on my stoop playing with little G.I. Joes. And then right before my eyes came this real live G.I. Joe. So you can imagine this was my first adverse childhood experience. We talk about ACEs all the time. This guy pointed his bayonet, his rifle was M16 with his bayonet, told me, get my little nigger ass in the house. I didn't know what it meant, but I know it wasn't nice. And I ran in the house crying and screaming. And my mother, of course, embraced me, and she talked to me about, why these things happen, what they do to us. But again, it didn't affect me. But again, that humanity issue was always talked about. So, you fast forward some 50 some years later to be able to come back to the community where I grew up in, which I still have fond memories of, living on 2400 Claymont Street, and now serving as the board chair at Kingswood Community Center and on REACH, with all the fabulous things that we're doing over there. It's mind-boggling. And had I ever imagined that? No, I did not. To Markevis' point, it was always possible, but the probability of that happening was very, very rare. So Dr. King's impact had a great deal of influence on my life. And as I grew older, my grandfather and I would walk the streets of Wilmington right after the riots, after all the burning, and I would ask him, how are we going to build the city back up? He says, well, we're going to need architects. We're going to need engineers. We're going to need contractors. And I was like, well, what does an architect do? He says, well, they design, build. I said, that's what I want to do. I want to help build the city back up. So that was infused me. So this tragedy turned into triumph for me because it inspired a dream, which Dr. King always talked about. So that would inspire me to get into architecture.
Wow. I mean, that is just an amazing story. And to talk about how you and your father walked down the street after the riots, I did the very same thing the next day in Wilmington. And my son, who was 3 at the time, was asleep. And I'm looking out my window and seeing all the looting and the fires being set. And I'm like, my son has no idea what this world has in store for him. But I know I need to make it a better place. So me and Aaron started making phone calls, and then we're like, all right, we put this community cleanup. And I know within like hours, we had thousands of people that were ready to show up on the streets of Wilmington the next morning. Fortunately, Public Works cleaned it up, and by the time we got there, it was all cleaned up. But I still felt like I owed it to my son to walk him down the street, although he was 3, to start to have that conversation with him. And lo and behold, of course, we bump into Joe Biden on Market Street and Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, and we end up in Joe Biden's, national campaign ads. And, it was an experience for my son. And every time we drive past that corner, he says, Daddy, that's where we saw Joe Biden. And to have my son, know Joe Biden, our president, and to see where we are now heading as a country, and I'm assuming we can all agree that we are heading in a positive direction after everything definitely that happened last year. And to speak more to that point, there's a question here, because I think we want to focus on, an optimistic outcome, an optimistic perspective. We can talk about all the deficits and all the things that are going wrong, but we really, I think with all of the work that we're all doing, we focus on, to Markevis' point, the possibility. So this next question, for anyone who wants to answer, and then we need to really start to wrap up, because I respect all of your time, and I respect the time with my son, and I need to get home so I can tuck him in before it's bedtime. So this is the last question that we're going to have for the night. And again, you can reach out to us through social media. We'll make sure that you have all of our contact information. But if you could take your experiences, your talent, your blessings, and assemble an army to help you, what problem would you like to solve next? How would you like to be stretched to reach a new level? And that's from Brian DeSabatino. And that's one question. And I'm sorry, I skipped another one. Clearly, your lives are an inspiration. What are some of the other things you see around us in Wilmington that gives you hope for young Black men and women? So if I could have one of you answer one of those questions and one of you ask the other, I think you have these questions on your screen as well. Jahmere, we'll let you go first, sir.
Yeah, I can answer one of them. I want to answer the second question that you asked us about, what are some things that we see in Wilmington that can benefit young Black men and Black women? So I'm just going to be completely honest. I honestly feel like the warehouse. When I say this, for people who don't know, the warehouse follows an acronym called REACH, and it stands for Recreation, Education, Arts, Careers, and Health. So teens who come to the warehouse, they will be able to, explore their passions and navigate pretty much what they want to do in life, and they'll be super well-rounded when they go off into the real world. And I just want to hone into one specific pillar, which is our education pillar, which I feel like is super, super important. And I say this because just for the simple fact of how it will enhance our black community. So there's a test, standardized test, and it's called the SAT. Sadly, the SAT kind of determines your scholarship eligibility for certain institutions. And the SAT does not benefit minorities. It does not benefit people of color at all, because people of color who live in low-income communities do not have access to, get the SAT prep and to get the SAT training. So for us to have that education pillar to, offer young Black women and young Black men the things that everybody else is getting, I feel like that is leveling us up and putting us, one step ahead, because not a lot of people have access to, personal tutors and personal training to get them high SAT scores so they can get scholarships to attend these great colleges. So I just feel like that's just one example of how our education pillar and the warehouse as a whole would just simply benefit young Black men and young Black women.
And I see we got another young Black man who joined us, young Malachi. How you doing, young Prince?
Say what's up.
Future leader of the world.
Watch this.
Does anyone want to take the next question?
Ni hao. I'll take the second one.
Go for it.
He's saying hello, ni hao.
Ni hao.
But from if I could take all the talent, the blessings that that's been instilled upon me. When I see this right here, this young man, it's Black excellence. And I would love to take an army to close the digital divide, the income divide, and the wealth divide. See, what I'm doing with the digital divide is obvious. We donate technology back into the communities, but we're also training people up within the tech divide so that they can gain employable skills to help close the income divide. Too many of our Black and brown community members are working minimum wage, which is ridiculous. When we have so much excellence in us, we need to close that income divide, but be able to close that digital divide to get there will be great. And for me, a long-term goal is, what will it look like to have a young Black kid that gets a laptop donated to him, that gets trained on the skills, which get a job in NERDiT now or outside of NERDiT now, to then open up their own NERDiT now. Now listen to this. I don't want you to pay us to open up your own NERDiT now. No, I want you to go into another community that look like ours and start that cycle all over again. Go into a Middletown, go into Sussex County, go into California, New York, wherever. Open up a NERDiT now and start all the way from the beginning. We're going to close that digital divide. We're going to close that income divide, and we're going to close that wealth divide so that it becomes an equitable country for all people, Black and brown skin. Right, son? Something like that.
Thanks, Markevis. So, Ivy, I see you. Thank you for joining in. Ivy Harlow, the great leader of the Jewish Community Center. She is an amazing leader and awesome partner to have in this work. So I'm going to give you each 15 seconds. Final words. Start with you, Ray Rhodes, then Jahmere, then Markevis, then Aaron. Final words before we end tonight.
Yep, I'd like to just dovetail on that last question. I think, if it was one problem that I would like to fix, I think it would be the high rate of incarceration of Black men. Our families are broken. When you have a broken family structure that doesn't have the leadership that's needed for a lot of our young men today, that's why we have the high rate of gun violence. If we lower the incarceration rate, we will also lower the amount of gun violence in our city and also lower the amount of homicides that we experience, not only in this city, but across the country. So whatever we have to do in that regard, I would like to make that a platform that stays at the top of all of our legislative agendas.
Drew Fennell, I see you as well. Thank you for joining tonight. Love Drew from Christina Care. She's amazing also. Jahmere, on you.
I just want to say thank you all so much for this opportunity. I was super grateful to sit up here to just sit in a room of Black excellence and to have an amazing conversation. It was super nice. You don't get to have this opportunity. This doesn't just happen out of nowhere. So I just want to say thank you guys so much. It was an amazing conversation. And I just want to let everybody know that I am 18 years old. So I am a little younger than most of the panelists. But this is not the end of me. You will see so much more of Jahmere. So thank you guys so much.
And Jahmere, something someone told me when I was younger is never be intimidated in any room you go into, because you always have something invaluable to add, and that's your perspective.
Right.
I think you've seen that culminate within the warehouse. So keep going what you're doing. We're proud of you, and we're going to be visiting you at one of the HUs, whether it's Howard or Harvard. Kiwi, it's your turn, Kiwi.
And some hope for Hampton in there too.
I got accepted in Hampton, so you never know.
You got accepted at every school on the East and West Coast. Kiwi, go ahead.
I thank y'all for this opportunity, being afforded the opportunity to be able to speak here today. And moreover, I want to just show kids that you could grow up in a city, you can grow up in a community, you could grow up poor or whatever have you in a place like Riverside. I was embarrassed then. I now come back. I feel proud to be from Riverside. I'm proud to see what REACH is doing right now. And it gives me, it's like a badge of honor when I walk into boardrooms with my hoodie on and people are looking at you like, who is this kid? I'm the kid from Riverside that owns this room right now. giving back to my community that's giving back so much to us. I want to show my Black and brown community members that we can do it. Focus on possibilities over probabilities. God said it's yours. Let's claim it, people. Let's claim it.
Amen. And I just got a text from one of my other board chair, REACH Riverside, Charlie McDowell, who is commending all of us for a fantastic job. And shout out to my other two board chairs, one a co-chair at the warehouse, Anaya Patterson, who is also a teenager, and Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker. So Aaron Bass, on you to close this out. And then I have one more special guest that's about to join me in the room with me right now. Aaron?
Sure. Black excellence, Muhammad Ali said, "I am the greatest." I said that even before I knew I was. Your words have power. What we're doing at Eastside is actually believing in that. We ask every student, what do you want to be? And if I could do anything, it would be connect more young people with their careers and start doing that at a young age. And so I've been in this game education for over 2 decades. I have young people now that have done some amazing things. I'm looking forward to seeing so many more become the leaders of Delaware. By the way, Dallas and Philadelphia are playing right now. It's the Sixers. They are beating the Dallas Mavericks. So looking forward to watching more of that. Anytime Dallas loses, I'm here for it. Have a good night, y'all.
I knew that. That's why I ended with him, because I knew he was going to take it there. Tessie Holmes, love you. Kingswood board member Sharon Bryant, thank you for all of the love throughout the course of this. Brian DeSabatino, everyone that tuned in. As I said, we have one more special guest, and then after this special guest, we're going to play the video again of all of the work that we were able to accomplish in 2020, and to show you the inspiration, the vision that we have for the Riverside neighborhood, Northeast Wilmington, and the entire city of Wilmington. We are taking the world by storm, and in a good way, and it's because of Black excellence and some of the gentlemen you see on the screen. And since we're talking about gentlemen, now it's time for me to bring on a phenomenal Black woman who will be leading this conversation in March. Kenyetta Mccurdy Bird, my chief operating officer, really my boss for the work group, the Warehouse, REACH Riverside, and Kingswood Community Center. And you're gonna come stand next to me and speak into my earbud, and just say hi to the crowd, hi to the group, and tell them about what you're gonna do next month.
Sure. Thanks, Logan. Wow, this was amazing. Thanks for the opportunity to even participate in this. So next month, in celebration of Women's History Month, we will continue with the theme of Black excellence. So we will have a virtual table talk with just the ladies. And so during this time, we will be inspired by gifted, talented, Black female community leaders who embody greatness. So Black people are dynamic and multifaceted. So with that being said, Black excellence is hard to define. So ladies, I need your help. So join us on March 25th, 7 p.m. via Facebook Live. March 25th via Facebook Live, 7 p.m. So I was told I had to do a little quick commercial break. So I need to remind you guys to submit your creative work. And that creative work includes art, poem, they even said case studies, and so much more. So please visit our event page for details concerning your submission. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hosting you all next month.
Thanks, Kenyetta. And we both were COVID tested, so we're good. And Allison, I see you. Shout out to Leadership Delaware. I'm a board member of Leadership Delaware. Markevis is now a current fellow. And shout out to Linda and Strive and everybody that tuned in tonight. If you have an extra 5 minutes, check out our video, and please hit us up on our social media. Thank you again to It's Time Tech Network for partnering with us, and we are out. Good night.
The work group, the volunteers, the supporters, the donors, the community residents are working to deal in one of the most challenging times in our country.
If we're ever going to make a real difference in how we address racial inequalities in the United States, REACH Riverside, the work around Riverside, is some of the most important in our whole country.
The organization has credibility citywide. It's got credibility among foundations and corporations and governments. We just have a strong sense that this is going to be a successful endeavor.
Children and sort of teens and young adults of color are not getting a fair shot in our county, in our city, in our state, in our country. And this is an institution where we work to make society a little more equal.
These are our children, right? These are the children that we see in our hospital. These are the children in our community. These are our children, and we must do more.
If we can make a lasting difference in Riverside, we can show that we can actually make a lasting difference in intergenerational poverty that is highly correlated with race.
We're in a pandemic. We also have faced a racial reckoning. And so to see this community, to see REACH Riverside come together and say, we're not going to just lament and feel bad about the situation. We're going to go into action. From their health to their education to the development of this area and building wealth and home ownership, it is a past, present, and future that will create a legacy for all of us.
I'm Logan Herring, CEO of the Warehouse, REACH Riverside, and Kingswood Community Center, what we affectionately call ourselves the work group. The impact of our work in 2020 has been tremendous. We distributed over $280,000 collectively to all of the families in the public housing community of Riverside. We distributed 342 Chromebooks, over 10,000 meals, providing household supplies, assisting folks get signed up for the census. Our team, our staff, our board members, our volunteers, our partners, everybody really stepped up to the call.
We had to adjust our delivery throughout the year. Certainly wanted to still have an impact even in face of COVID. So we were finding different ways to be able to continue to have an impact of our community, even though the center wasn't physically open.
It's just so amazing because there's something about empowering and uplifting a community through food. I think we're going to start a movement of people taking back their power to grow and really cultivate their bodies in a different way.
My team has gone beyond what I expected. I try to get them to focus on where we are at this moment and the things that we could do to help the children become the great people we know they can.
We are going to create a cradle-to-college education system to serve the kids, plus all the health and wellness facilities that are necessary to make for a robust neighborhood. Taking people out of an impoverished situation and moving them into a thriving mixed-income environment, you say, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
We know concentrated poverty does not work. Historically, that is what public housing has done. What we're doing here is it's a microcosm of what we're trying to fix in the nation as a whole.
Teen Warehouse is a place of refuge for all of our children. When you have the President-elect of the United States come visit the Teen Warehouse, that matters. That tells our children that you are the most important individuals in the nation. And that's the message that we need to be sending to our babies.
My passion is to give back to them so they can have more than what I had, and they can see, wow, Miss Melody, you grew up in Southbridge, you have a master's degree, how did you do this? Because I want them to know that they can do it too.
So you name it, we did it. Virtual programming, access to healthcare, access to resources, access to basic needs. That's what we did, and that's what we're continuing to do. The mission at REACH Riverside is to eliminate the barriers of structural racism, identifying what the oppression and those barriers have been over time, and systematically break them down, and at the same time, build our community up. And that's what we're doing with the work group, the Warehouse, REACH Riverside, and Kingswood Community Center.